So when we talk about this key measure, population is the huge impact here. Is it a bit hard to say? We've got a big variant on these numbers, the impact on immigration, birth rates as well. I've seen different versions of that. Is it a bit hard to say where we're going to be over the next 2, 3, even 7 years?
Hard to pinpoint exactly, but we do know that immigration has dropped for all the obvious reasons. The borders are closed, that our immigration intake has slowed to a trickle. In fact, most of the immigration that we're actually seeing is expats returning home. So the immigration levels, which are so low right now, are likely to continue for some time. Both sides of politics have actually come out and said that even when COVID-19 has been fixed, or when we're learning to live with it, that immigration is going to be lower than it was prior to COVID. And one of the things that when we look at the housing cycle in Australia over the last, 3 or 4 decades, one of the critical drivers of it has been population growth, and the bulk of that has been immigration.
So if we look at the best estimate, if you like, from this study, 130,000 fewer homes over 3 years, what sort of impact are we talking? First of all, on construction, how that can be replaced, where jobs can go elsewhere, and maybe social housing is part of the answer, but also then the hit in turn on the economy.
Yeah, it's a big drag on the economy, because it's not just the tradespeople who work on the construction sites, it's the raw materials, it's the bricks, it's the windows, it's the timber, the steel, and the appliances. So for the retailers who supply the ovens and microwaves and carpets, they're also going to be impacted too, because we've just got fewer houses being built. And that 130,000 over the next couple of years seems a fair estimate to me. There's still a pipeline of construction that's yet to hit the economy. So we do have a bit of a supply of completed dwellings still to come at a time when we do know that demand is also weakening. So for 2021, it looks like it's going to be a really tough year for the construction side. You did mention that there could be some offset from higher infrastructure spending, to the extent that we do see state and perhaps the Commonwealth Government, the budget in a couple of weeks, ramping up some infrastructure spending. That will absorb some of the workers in the construction sector, but we just need to wait and see whether it's going to be enough.
So I guess that's the question. How much would be enough, whether it be big infrastructure projects, whether it be some social housing, building new stuff or repairing it, and the states, the federal government's made it clear that the states need to do a big part of that. What about the shortfall? Any estimate on jobs, and what do these people do? Because you enter a trade, you might be 10 years into it, 20, 30 years into it. It's pretty hard to just pivot like some white-collar workers might do.
Yeah, very hard to pivot from, say, being an electrician or a plumber in a housing development to then working on a road construction or the new airport out at Sydney and these sorts of things. So it is harder to do. So I actually think it can't be done easily. There'll be some absorption, but not complete absorption. So for the construction side of the economy, it looks like we're going to be in for a period of weaker employment, weaker new activity. And so in a sense, we need to see perhaps home renovations picking up, that we need to see for the existing population. And don't forget, there's still 10.5 million houses in Australia. They do depreciate over time. They do need to be fixed and renovated. And as you mentioned, public housing is a critical issue where the government could step up and provide affordable public housing to people who are under severe financial stress at the moment. That is something that they might be looking at the budget. Let's hope so.
How much of a natural shock absorber, if you like, is that reduced demand and fewer houses being built for house prices? I've seen estimates that Melbourne will have a 15% overall reduction, pretty significant, but Sydney might only have 5%, for example. Yeah. Do you think that's accurate? The
supply and demand dynamics do work. We've been talking about the demand side from lower immigration, but if there's fewer buildings being completed over the next couple of years, then the supply is not as robust as it would have been otherwise. So the supply and demand do work, that you do get this offset, if you like, from weaker construction activity. The various estimates that I've seen suggest that we've probably got to have about 50 to 100,000 too many dwellings in Australia. And of course, it depends from city to city or region to region, but we do have this oversupply, and we do need the population growth to slowly absorb that. But the bottom line means that we're going to have some weakness in prices probably through 2021, even though interest rates are remarkably low. The other challenge for the housing market, of course, will be when the mortgage holidays end, and the various banks have signalled that'll be the early part of 2021, so that mortgage holiday repayments that some people have been enjoying will come to an end in the next few months as well.
Yeah, that's a real unknown. I guess even the bank's somewhat of an unknown there. Is it going to be like housing always has been, nearly always has been in Australia, all about the markets? I mean, so far it seems Hobart and Canberra still are seeing upticks in prices. Can that continue? Are there going to be pockets completely left out of the downturn?
Possibly, and I've just been looking at the CoreLogic data for the last month and a half for Adelaide, Brisbane, and even Perth has started to pick up again. So I wouldn't say the prices are going gangbusters, but they've edged up about 0.5% in a month and a half. So they've certainly stopped falling. Anyway, there could be some seasonalities there in some of these numbers. But the Australian housing market is remarkably resilient. We've still got the very favourable tax treatment for investors, even though they've pulled out of the market in the last few months. But from the recent housing finance numbers, it's really encouraging to see that first home buyers who might have been lucky enough to maintain their employment, have got a secure job with an okay wage, are now stepping up to taking advantage of these incredibly low interest rates. So first home buyers, again, with some incentives from the various state and territory governments, have been the ones that have been driving this, putting this floor under the housing market, at least in the short term.